Hello and welcome to another episode of Securities Lending Live with Pierpoint. I'm Roy Zimmerhansl. Thanks very much for joining us. This is our second event for this year. And as you will see or can see, I have got a huge number of guests joining me today. So I'm really excited about that. All experts in their field. So it's going to be a great session. The subject today is to talk about something that we're going to be launching next week. On Monday, the Pierpoint Alpha Community launches, and we'll be telling you a little bit about that. The reason I have these experts on is because they are helping me. They are the go-to people that I will be relying on for information, and they'll be helping to educate the wider community. So we wanted to let you know what it is and what the objective is, but obviously, the intention of all these events is that they are live so that you can ask questions and participate, right? The opportunity we've had over the last year is there have been all kinds of conferences and events and virtual webinars and everything, and that's been fantastic because they've almost all been free. That may or may not happen in the future, but in a lot of cases, the reality is subjects have been exhausted. And what people want to know is things that they want to know about. And that's also one of the drivers. So before we get into that, I'm going to launch our weekly competition to see where do we get more viewers from. Kent or the Netherlands. The Netherlands is on a hot streak. Unfortunately, as many of you will have seen in the news, Jeroen Bakker has got himself a great job at Refinitiv, so is no longer part of the Pierpoint team. So we wish him luck and thank him for all the great work he did and fantastic blogs. And I'm sure we'll come across him again in the not too distant future. So if you're watching live, tell us where you're actually watching from. Pop it into the chat. And the other thing is, if you like these events, pop a like in, do the thumbs up or the clap, or if you particularly like what any of the people say that on this episode, in the middle of it, feel free to give us a like if you so choose. But anyway, tell us where you're coming from. I'm going to now turn to my panelists and ask them to introduce themselves. So you know who it is that they're going to be, who you're going to be hearing from. So maybe first I can go to Ali. Why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Roy, and a big hello to all the audience. My name is Ali Kazmi, as Roy mentioned. I am a managing director at Hans UK Consulting, a specialist firm advising on securities lending taxation issues. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Importantly, I was at Barclays Global Investors and latterly BlackRock, where I was the tax architecture of their plan. And now I work with both borrowers and lenders, and particularly with sovereign lenders on the securities lending side.
Yeah, and one of the things that that just came up the other day was this whole idea of you help investors classify tax issues as sort of fully legit, and how it aligns with the intention, the spirit of the law, and the application of the law, but also things that are questionable, which is obviously a key issue at this time. So thanks very much, Ali. I'd like to now turn to Jeff. So Jeff, hopefully
my technology issues are over.
I'm good.
I'm Jeff Kidwell. I'm 38 years and counting in the securities financing business. I did my 22 years at Morgan Stanley, where I ran the repo division. I actually set up the European repo desk as well as Canadian and US. And then I set up a brand new repo desk at Cantor Fitzgerald. And I did the same at AVM down in Florida, where I'm now located, thankfully. And so my expertise is repo and securities lending, from the trading, sales, and broker-dealer, and now buy-side standpoint, and even vendor side. So I have one of those unique perspectives. It helped me in designing the course for Finance Academy, and I think it'll help me in answering pretty much any repo questions people have out there, although I'm sure somebody will try to stop me.
Yeah, I was calculating it earlier this week, and what I'm pretty confident of is that you speak to a wider community of repo counterparties than probably anyone else I know, because you've got buy, sell side, and really end investors that aren't really sort of commonly known to people. So you add a
Plus,
huge.
I have that funny repo commentary that everybody reads, and I don't know. Some issues are read by about 5,000 people, and some, 2,000. But it gets out there to a lot of unusual individuals. I think 50 state treasurers read it, and pretty much the entire staff of the Federal Reserve and ECB read it.
Mandatory reading. You should probably turn that into a paid letter, but probably you'd have to drop some of the fun. Anyway, thanks, Jeff. We'll be back to you in a little bit. Can I now turn to Zafira, who is the Pierpoint Learning and Development Partner?
Exactly that. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zafira Jitu, and I head the training and education side of business. I'm head of the Securities Finance Academy, and I have over 12 years experience in learning and development concentrated around financial services. So I am really excited about this community of ours, because I feel securities, finance and financial services learning tends to be by a organization per organization basis, which is absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. But where do people within the business just go to have a chat and share nuggets of information, great learning and development ideas for their teams, and also to keep up to date on the developments that are happening in L&D, i.e. digital transformation, as the pandemic has pushed learning forward hugely in the digital space. So we kind of have to ask ourselves what's next. And I am always on the forefront of developments in L&D and look forward to speaking to everyone on anything to do with training, and whether that's from a user perspective, or if you're thinking about organizing training or designing training even. So that's my passion.
Great, and you certainly are dedicated and committed to that. I can ensure that, or assure everyone that's the case. Is it just a comment for people watching? We are going to have a general Q&A at the end. You've got an unbelievable cast of experts in their areas here, so I'd encourage you to put questions in, and we'll do our best to get to them either during the show or afterwards. We'll still comment. So again, if you're watching on replay, put questions in, put comments in, and we will make certain that we actually get to them. So Zafira, thanks very much. Now I want to turn to Radek. Radek, over to you.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Radek Stech, and I am the CEO of the Global Principles for Sustainable Securities Lending, which is a community-based organization. In other words, it is a community interest company which serves the interest of broader communities. So I'm very privileged to be part of this initiative, because what we are all talking about is serving communities, and this is what we are all about. Just wanted to say that in terms of our aims and goals, what we want to achieve is first of all, a global standard for sustainable securities lending. Secondly, that standard being influential in the field, which is sustainable securities lending. And in addition, after that, this standard influencing or making impact in the broader sustainable finance market. And actually, I'm really delighted to be here and telling you that we are all, not just me, achieving all those goals and objectives. So really privileged to be here, Roy, because what you are doing is exactly what we are promoting: community-based approach, which is also, promoting, encouraging shared action, sharing expertise and communication. So thank you.
Agreed. I think if there is a lesson that we all agree that we've taken from 2020 is that this is a community. No one is self-sufficient. I've been doing this business for about 120 years, and I'm still doing it. So the idea of the community is to gather all the people that know their bits about it, and we're all better together than we are as individual units. So thanks very much, Radek. If I can now turn to Sean, over to you.
Hello, Roy. Thanks for having me. So I'm Sean Murray. I'm the CEO of Margin Reform. Margin Reform is a management consultancy. We are very focused on collateral, margin, and legal. My background is banking. I've been on the sell side for around 30 years, 10 years in operations, 10 years in risk, 10 years looking at collateral strategy at large tier 1 organizations. Margin Reform, I joined around 18 months ago. We're a management consultancy. As I say, we work with buy side, sell side, fintechs and industry bodies. We look at anything to do with collateral margin, really. Mainly focused on derivatives, but with a sec lending lend when there needs to be, or repo lend, but a big focus for us on derivatives and anything that touches derivatives front to back. It could be strategy, it could be back office, it could be optimization, it could be regulation, but anything there we focus on. We're a smallish organisation at the moment. It's about 10 of us, but we work very closely with Roy and his team, and looking forward to getting involved in the pack.
Right. Thanks very much, Sean. And obviously, probably the single thing that's changed the most in the finance community over the last 10 or 12 years is that everything's collateralized now, right?
Yep, very much so. Very much so. Touches everything, touches everybody: front office, middle office, back office, settlements, legal, so on and so forth. Very much.
Thanks very much, Sean. And last but not least is Julian. And Julian, over to you. And there we go.
Thanks, Roy. Hello, everybody. My name is Julian Eyre at Eyre & Co, and I'm working with the Pierpoint team on a collaboration basis. I'm the pack man for technology, and my background is derivatives originally, a while back in the front office and the middle office. I've spent almost 15 years in technology in the vendor world, enterprise platforms and data. Most recently, been very active working on the SFTR regulation and testing. Today, we're focusing on looking at building out communities, to echo Radek's point of view around community, collaboration, synergy, and alignment. Buzzword compliancy, I think, is there. And we're seeing definitely some good initiatives driven out of some of the trade associations, looking at a holistic approach to emerging technologies that will work as platform enablers for the future. Within the PAC community, we'll offer an opportunity, hopefully, to discuss and share thoughts around the impacts and opportunities that technology moving forwards will bring to the industry. Thank you.
Right. So thanks, Julian. And I think, hopefully in the audience, what you can see is that despite the various areas of sort of siloed expertise, there is no such thing as a silo, because, taxation covers all of the issues that we deal with. Sustainable finance, by definition, is however you are financing transactions, whether you're financing securities projects or businesses carrying them on. The reality is that repo is really the engine that is kind of fueling the markets that we're in today, and so is really a bedrock part of what we're doing. And as exchanged with Sean, the truth is everything is collateralization. Very different to when I moved to the UK in '87 and set up a stock loan desk for the first time, where for 18 months we traded everything uncollateralized with 18 different counterparties. So we're in a very different world today. But look, first, let me talk about sort of what the PAC is. So the PAC is, the idea is the Pierpoint Alpha Community. And the clue is in the name. The reason we've put Alpha in there is because, over the last year, we've had lots of webinars. We've had lots of sort of Zoom calls, and we've had lots of courses, right? People without that all of a sudden have time because they're not making the commute. They all of a sudden have time for courses. So a lot of people I know, and hopefully many of you, have taken that opportunity to do courses, personal development courses, things you're just interested in, or work-related ones. And the feeling, though, is that I think that people that have had the opportunity to take courses have taken the key courses. And the webinars and the conferences, they address issues, but they address issues that typically, and rightly, the sponsors want to cover, not necessarily what the widest audience of people in the securities finance business want to learn about. And the reality is, with the outsourcing of business practices around the world, there's more need than ever to get depth, understanding, and breadth of knowledge. And that's hard to get when you're in kind of siloed standalone communities. So we think that by gathering experts like the ones that are on the program today and others, we'll actually bring a whole new paradigm, the opportunity for people to learn month in and month out. So it's a membership site. Many of you will be familiar with membership sites, but we did a lot of research on what people wanted. And what people wanted was they wanted access to information. So they knew their firms had access, had information internally, but they didn't necessarily have easy access to it. They worked in firms where people knew all the answers, but particularly when they're not in the office together, it's hard to just casually ask a question and find an answer, right? And then importantly and interestingly, people wanted a community. And, you know, we run a securities lending group on LinkedIn, and there's a number of them. And there's 5,000 members in our group, and that's fantastic. We crossed 5,000 about a month ago. But the reality is there's not a lot of back and forth engagement of asking questions, challenging people, trying to dig into information. A lot of people think that their information might be special to their firm. They might think that they're the only ones that have access to that information. And so if that's the case, and you need to find out the answer to something, how do you get that? So what we're going to be doing with the PAC or PAC is that members will get every month a mini course. So a tutorial, a session will take a specific topic, you know, emerging markets, or we'll look at pledge, or there's sort of 15 different topics we already have identified that we're working on. So something that will cover one of those areas. There will be interviews with experts like the people that you talk about here, but because it's in a closed community, we'll dig into even more detail about the kinds of issues, topics, and challenges that are actually being faced, things that you can't do if it's just on a public venue like this, where people are, again, rightly hesitant to share more in-depth thoughts and views. They might do it to a closed community, but they're less likely to do it to just the open universe, as you will. And then finally, people will know that we've been doing weekly blog posts for almost a year and a half now, and that's great. But again, there's a limit as to what we can do. So another part of the PAC will be on a monthly basis. There'll be one premium editorial item. So we'll either do a private podcast or we'll do a private editorial piece. So real premium content for there. So a course, a live event where there might be Q&A with either a wide panel or a specific expert, and premium editorial content. And then on top of that, there's also a forum to ask questions. And I keep talking about engaging with people. And each of the people that you're seeing today has taken responsibility for being the expert that covers these areas. So I don't know the answer to everything, you know, but if there's a taxation question, you know, Ali will answer that. Or if it's something about the ESG community, Radek and his team will curate that. If there's something about collateral or repo, you know, that'll be Sean or Jeff. So you'll always have access to an expert who will be looking at questions and sort of curating the content. So that's what it's all about. information, communication, and connections. And we think that all of that brings alpha to people. So there you go. That's probably enough for me for now. We've had a couple of people check in. So we have our other partner, John Arneson. He's checking in from Hampshire. So Hampshire is leading the Kent competition. Although I see Grant coming in, if I'm not mistaken. He's identified himself as being part of the Wild West. Oh no, he's identifying my business as part of the Wild West in 1987. But look, the reality is, until Robert Maxwell did his tricky little games, people were quite happy to be uncollateralized and undocumented. But that's a story from another era. Right. So again, put your comments in there. Let us know what you think. And now what I want to do is I want to turn to each of the individuals you've heard from and let them talk about their involvement with the PAC, their thinking about it and their engagement. So maybe, Ali, maybe if I can start with you and just sort of turn it over to you now.
Sure, Roy. I was just unmuting myself. Look, this is a really exciting time to be part of the PAC community. I think it's really needed. Like any other, any other form of community, when you have something as specialist as Securities Lending, which has its own language, its own specialization, it was long overdue. So well done, Roy, for pulling us together. And I think sort of like we're at a very interesting time. The world is turning on its axis. There's going to be a new incumbent in the White House. Brexit remains to be seen exactly where we end up. A lot of regulatory development. And of course, subject very close to my heart is obviously taxation. And we are seeing a fundamental shift in what is happening on the tax front. With the 55 billion issue hanging across all the European treasuries, we've seen action, the trial of the century taking place in the London High Court. We've got New York courts busy with over 100 pension funds defending themselves against the action from SCAT, the Danish tax authority. And just over Christmas, the Cayman Island authorities have been contacted by the New York court to help. So I think that we're going to see a lot over the coming year. It's going to be a very exciting time. And, it remains to be seen, what do the other tax authorities across Europe do besides Denmark? You've got obviously Germany now. They took some action. They had two Britons there. So let's see. And I think sort of like it's going to be interesting as to what the response of the market participants is going to be, both on the the agency side as well as the beneficial owners.
Yeah, Ali, and look, I think one of the key areas of understanding and learning for the next year is that it's okay to trade with counterparties that suffer withholding tax, and it's okay to do trades that actually benefit from lower tax rates. But where are those lines? What are the lines and what are the configuration? What should you avoid? What shouldn't you avoid?
Exactly, and I think those tram lines have to be reestablished, and that's the only way that we are going to bring back some of the beneficial owners, or actually tap into new pools that we haven't tapped into before. So that's the order of the day. And I think sort of like, and I'm sure I don't want to take anything away from Radvan, which is about, Radek, in relation to, where will the ESG agenda also square up with regards to tax?
Yeah, look, and I think that's probably a good point to actually go to Radek. Radek, taxation, thanks, Ali. Radek, taxation is one of the key principles. Oh, you're on mute still. No event.
Okay.
2021 would be complete without at least one saying, I think you're still on mute.
Exactly. So, Roy, thank you very much. Taxation is part of the global PSSL, as well as collateral, where you have an amazing experts, as well as inclusion and diversity and short selling. So I think the key point I want to say at the very beginning is that I'm collaborating with the whole value chain, which includes beneficial owners, but also the public sitting behind the beneficial owners. And it's very complex, as we know, because under the beneficial owner definition, we have, pension funds, but also large or smaller institutional investors. In addition, I have contribution from agent lenders, prime brokers, and hedge funds. Yeah, that's amazing. And what I'm seeing at this stage is that representatives from all of those stakeholders are making some interesting propositions in relation to ESG. So that's in terms of introduction, but taxation is part of it. We have a dedicated principle on taxation, and part of that principle is to also collaborate with tax authorities worldwide. And I very much look forward to collaborating with you, because myself, I'm not an expert in taxation, although I must admit I did lots of teaching as part of my Exeter Law School vocation on taxation. So we are talking about lots of things, including legal cases. But you are the experts. You know most. You know a lot, and I think in the end, I really want to collaborate with you, explore some of those connections on taxation, collateral, green bonds. I think this is the key thing. That yesterday Global PSSL announced its first event. Yeah. And as you all know, having a first event may be quite modest, but for our first event, we have the World Bank Group, journalists from the Financial Times and so on, and also the key players from the hedge fund community contributing. So it's amazing to be part of PAC, because I can't do everything on my own. I very much have to rely on expertise from other fields and other experts. But at the same time, what I'm very, very much interested in is connecting the dots, making the global PSSL working for the benefit of the community, so that it's not self-serving, if you know what I mean. I think this is really critical. So thank you.
Look, and that's the reality of the world that we're into now, right? In the 90s, it was a much smaller business and very few rules. And really what we've seen since the turn of the century here is much more engagement, be that from tax authorities in different countries setting up rules on what is and what isn't permissible, through to regulations around the need to collateralize things. So it is a continuum, and that's both the challenge and the opportunity. And the other thing is that we're kind of making it up as we go along. ESG and its principles, governance has been around, obviously forever, but the nuances of governance and the E and S specifically are becoming bigger issues. And that kind of making it up as you go along is fun, but also can be frustrating. And that kind of reminds me of collateral. So thanks very much, Radek. I want to go to Sean now, in fact, and talk about collateral, because the thing that I described in 2010, I kind of said, anyone that knows that collateral is spelled with a C rather than a K is an expert. And as people have been putting in models since then, the reality is you've had to create it as you've gone along. There hasn't always been a model to follow. So that's presumably challenges and the kind of things that you guys do.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough, right? It's certainly the world's changing their spelling of collateral, that's for sure. But just thinking about that model, and the governance that we've just discussed, there's not a one size fits all when it comes to collateral management. Everyone's got a different starting point, different challenge, different pain point. And that's really what we've been focused on with clients for the last 18 months is where are you? Where's your starting point? Where's your end point? What do you want to do? How do you want to get there? How much do you want to spend? Who have you got you can help? What are your resources have you got? So there are communities out there, of course. There's the trade associations where you can join, pay membership fees, etc. They can be quite large, but not every firm is in them. So if you think about where, from a collateral perspective, where regulation's been and where it's going to, it's done the sell side, it's done the big memberships. It's now moving into buy side for whether that's UMR, whether that's for SFTR, CSDR, lots of different types of clients now getting involved in collateral management. And they don't have necessarily have the same understanding of collateral and the journey it's been on for the last decade as to where it is now. And so that educational side of collateral management is still maybe moved from spelling to education. It's still very much in its infancy in certain organisations and in certain areas. And certainly we're seeing that in conversations we have. I think governance, though, is very important. So governance of what you're doing, how you do it, staying in control, making sure you do it the right way, building yourself up for the future, but while looking at the past. So if I'm a large organisation, I've gone through the compliance agenda, well, I still need to make sure I'm compliant. I still need to make sure I'm adhering to those regulations and that governance, because we all know that the fines abound, the fines are out there. Call it regulatory tax if you want, but there are things to pay when things go wrong. So you need to make sure you're on top of that. And again, that's another segment to the wheel, I think, of understanding collateral management and realising that solving regulation is one thing, staying on a path of business as usual and staying compliant with regulations is another. That clearly is one part of collateral. The whole alpha part of it, the cost, the efficiency, the resourcing is all on top of that as well. It's all part of the same pile. And you have to sift through really what concerns yourself as a firm or what concerns your firm to make sure you're focused on the right bits. From the perspective of investment and post-trade, collateral is a big part of a wider wheel. I see the industry now moving and understanding collateral to be a significant part of the industry. We're seeing investments. I've talked about winners and losers before on webinars and on podcasts. We're going to see some collaboration in the technology space. We're starting to see that. There's been a couple of big announcements in the last 2 weeks about people collaborating and doing JVs. That is going to continue. Staying abreast of that is quite challenging for anyone. I get challenged by it. There's a lot of information out there. So picking through it in an organisation like the PAC is going to be quite cool, I think, for people, particularly in the derivatives domain, which is where my expertise really lies. When people can come and ask questions that are very specific to their journey, to their organisation, to their problems, it makes life a lot easier than doing it maybe in a forum of 500 to 100,000 people. A lot easier to address, a lot easier to focus in and hone in on their problems, which I think is positive.
And I guess, Sean, the community that needs to know about collateral, particularly from the derivative perspective, by numbers of firms, that's going to be growing dramatically over this year and next.
Huge. Everyone needs to understand it already. They're all exchanging variation margin mainly on a regulatory basis. But for initial margin, this new process that's coming out through uncleared margin rules, definitely that's going to be a game changer for a lot of these organisations and their knowledge base. Even if you look at pension funds, for example, who don't have to clear at the moment, they may have to clear at some point in the future. So there's a whole sort of groundwork and a swell of the market starting to evolve. It's starting to change. Organisations starting to understand that maybe clearing and uncleared have got a difference between them from a pricing and a cost perspective. They need to understand better. So I think there's a huge amount of clients still out there trying to understand and people trying to get to grips with what those challenges are. But yeah, you're right. The general growth of UMR for phases 5 and 6 and initial margin is enormous.
Great. Thanks for that. So I just want to give a shout out to Andy Agathangelu, who has actually commented. I don't know if Andy's still on the line here, but Andy's dropped his email address into the comments. And Andy's an evangelist for transparency and financial services reform, and I'm really pleased to be part of the transparency task force. So look, they're trying to make it a better environment so people can trust banks again, so that we can have more openness. And to me, that's consistent with what we're trying to do with the ESG initiatives. I think greater transparency would have been a good thing from the taxation point of view, and some of the issues that we have today. If there was more information there, we'd be in a better environment. And in terms of operating costs and trading revenues and opportunities, the truth is SFTR is really the first regulatory initiative that has required this community to provide information to regulators. So all of those are heading in the right direction. So Sean, thanks for that, and thanks for stopping in, Andy. And again, to everyone, the recording will be available immediately from that. So we've talked about collateral now. I want to turn to Jeff now. Maybe we can talk about repo.
Sure.
Jeff, over to you.
Of course, I'd like to talk about adaptability. One of the things that we previously mentioned. The nice thing about a PAC is that it moves quickly and adapts well. And we can adapt to any of the issues for any of these topics, or if we don't have it, we can get it and we can find an expert in it. I liken it to something I've used called Just Answer over here in the US. When I had a plumbing problem or I had an electrical problem or I couldn't figure out how to put a shelf up, you actually type in your question to this Just Answer company. That's a registered trademark, and they get you an expert within 5 minutes, and they walk you through all the steps. And it's a small fee that you pay each month to have somebody at your beck and call, if your mom or your dad are around, who can help you through these home projects. And there's a similarity to what we're trying to create here with the PAC. So there'll be experts like ourselves, me on the repo side, who can answer your questions very quickly, which a trade organization, as we just were talking about, can't. Those trade organizations move at the speed of a super tanker, and they are a trend-setting or trend-following group of people. And they don't all have the same specific problems, but they'll give you one generic answer, or they'll give you one generic discussion. And here we'll be able to tailor this to the audience and to the people that come into each of these small PAC groups. Another interesting thing is we've lost virtually the 38 annual conferences in our industries. So in the repo and the securities lending industry, I counted 38 annual conferences, which allowed us to gather, it allowed us to do networking, it allowed us to go over the general broad brush of regulations and of taxation, of collateral management, etc. And granted, a lot of people complained that that was too broad brush and we couldn't get into the issues, and they always left the regulations to last and people fell asleep. Those are going to go by the wayside, like the dodo bird, because there isn't a business model for that to be done virtually or remotely and still charge people. So instead, I think we get in this PAC formation, we actually get these mini conferences where we can set up a short, lesson or a short discussion on a specific topic where everybody can weigh in and ask the questions that they need answered. And I think that this will be a new way of networking. This is the new, I hate to say it, new normal, but basically the pandemic migration from the money centers to home trading and home learning and virtual training, which is also a part of what we're doing with the Finance Academy. And in my case, we're going to be covering a lot of repo issues. There's still a lot of regulations out there that we have to tackle. There are probably going to be some that we don't even see yet, like the EC's new hedge fund regulations, Volcker rule, which is still being bandied about, the Fed's OLA for fire sale risk. A lot of these things that are going to affect people in the repo arena that we need to chat about. And there's not going to be a forum to do that other than something like this. And this will be very personal. I'd like to just finish with one of my favorite subjects for the last 12 years is this peer-to-peer, all-to-all. I mean, we've seen the CCPs. We just talked about Andy's work and Andy's question about transparency. And I think we're all kind of realizing that the CCP, which was supposed to prevent systemic risk, has created concentration risk, and it also has reduced transparency instead of increasing transparency. And I think that's an issue that regulators and we as a user group are going to have to address. I think that the Global Peer Financing Association out of Canada with the 4 pension funds was a good step in that direction, which was kind of a homogenized community of specific issued large clients. And I think you could view these packs as something similar, where we may have a pack that has insurance companies and money funds, and another one that has GSCs and supranationals, and I don't know how it's going to break out, but I see so many possibilities, and I see the possibility to adapt to any situation that comes up. So if we suddenly have a lot of talk about Basel IV and we need a lot of work on that, it's very possible that'll enter into these PAC discussions. So
yeah,
sorry,
Jeff,
I went all over the place there, but
that's okay. That's a great example. I quite like the mention of Basel IV, because if you think about it, we had a great interview on the podcast with Mark Faulkner on it, and that's terrific. And I think people know quite a lot more about Basel IV, but it kind of ends there. So where do they go for more information on that? And that's where the challenge is. And I've written down the new networking, actually, Jeff. So that's what we're going to talk about the PAC for. So you've actually coined a new phrase. So thanks very much for that. I want to go to Zafira now, because the thing that Sean and Jeff have in common is they've both created courses for us, and that's all under Zafira's remit. So Zafira.
Yes, just listening to Sean and Jeff and everyone talking about sharing knowledge, I think the PAC is dear to my heart in the sense that, you know, the strong word for me is community. We're not just experts to be here and answer your questions. I am really looking forward to dialogue, having an open dialogue with everybody across the board, all our users, on all the different subjects and how they could tie into learning and development. So if we consider subjects on compliance, taxation, how do we make that a better learning experience? And in terms of learning, you know, we increasingly talk about learning in the flow of work and on demand and being bite-sized and blended and so forth. And being part of a community gives people to sort of unconsciously get the information they need and want. And as Roy mentioned, you know, that you don't just finish the discussion by watching a video, you have a community to go to and read questions and answers and discuss certain topics. So for me, having this community for me is about discussing how all these important subjects in financial services and all the different players, from business unit leaders to learners and decision makers, how from an L&D perspective, how can that be harnessed to improve your offerings and improve your staff? And also from a user perspective, just have people be able to network and share ideas, because being part of a Pierpoint team, for example, I really feel sometimes we do our best work when we are sharing ideas, or, you know, Julian, John, Roy, myself, or Jeroen, we come up with the best ideas when we're together, and I can just see that flourishing in a community where people can share ideas on learning and development. And if you didn't know something about L&D and how that could tie into your work or what you're trying to do within your organization, then I am able to lend that support and expertise. So, you know, whether that's use of videos or infographics or all these different tools we have. So for me, you know, the learning always keeps going ahead, keeps forging ahead, and being part of a community will just make it accessible to have those dialogues at a click of a mouse, really, rather than thinking you always have to have those discussions internally with HR and, you know, knowing specifically about training. So that's my take on looking forward to getting involved with the Pierpoint Alpha community.
Great. Thanks very much for that, Safira. And if I now turn to Julian, I think if I said that the 2010 to 2019 or 2020 decade was really about collateralization, I look at this coming decade as really being about digital transformation and technology, Julian. So over to you.
Roy, thank you. I think there are many sentiments that the panel and the members have already put on the table around the community, the network, the opportunity to share principles across some like-minded individuals. And technology plays a critical role underpinning the business, whether that's the technology supporting collateral. I think we need to be aware of legal tech. We know that there are initiatives around clause digitization for GIMSLers and GIMRAs. There's some examples in the fintech domain who are gaining significant investments and traction in the market, leveraging emerging technologies such as distributed ledgers. I think any market participant that's looking at their technology landscape and their digitization strategy will benefit from having access to pools of informed people, their peers, people who are specialists in certain areas, who will be able to provide advice and input with regards to strategy and to tactical initiatives that can accelerate digitization. It's obviously clear that the market infrastructure providers play a very important role. The bulk of these are underpinned by extensive market platforms and market infrastructure and technology. The primary trading systems are clearly playing a critical role, the key vendors and their digitization strategy, and it'll be interesting to bring together a forum to share thoughts and feedback on this. The final element that we're seeing is this acceleration of convergence towards standardization in both the business process and technology. The two are inseparably linked. The technology needs to be able to support new emerging products. Those products need to be able to capture the data associated with those products, whether that's collateral, ESG, or emerging markets, and the business process that needs to be applied to any of the transaction lifecycle events needs to be standardized. In principle, could be standardized across the industry. Now, I recognize that this is quite a significant challenge, and I don't think that is going to be a short-term task. However, there have been very positive initiatives within derivatives, repo, and stock borrow loan to look at elements or capabilities such as the common domain model, one of my pet favorites. And I think that the forum within the pack will give people an opportunity to share thoughts, understand and learn more about what the impact and opportunities are across the technology and digitization space. And hopefully this will then drive accelerated adoption and value from these emerging technologies.
And I guess, Julian, I think that one of the reasons that I'm really encouraged about discussion on technology is that I think there's finally an understanding with SFTR that technology actually enhances everyone. You know, it becomes a new baseline, and everyone is better off if everyone has a greater degree of automation and technology acceptance, and that it actually improves the overall market rather than necessarily trying to grab a competitive advantage over your group.
So, Roy, I think you're completely correct. There is, however, clearly the understanding of where competitive advantage starts and ends. What we've seen, and your point about SFTR is well made, that there was absolutely an appetite to collaborate, to align with a standards-based model, to lower the cost, improve the quality, and decrease the work effort for SFTR compliance in this example. That principle, I think we've seen a step change in the philosophy of some of the global financial institutions and the market infrastructure providers to be more collaborative, to hand over or participate in mutualization of solutions that are just industry standard pieces of the pie. So that is absolutely true, and this is going to accelerate. And obviously, a community-based model to discuss this is going to be valuable.
Right. Okay. Well, listen. Thanks very much for everyone. So, just a quick thing. So, the PAC is a combination of tutorials and education and learning, premium editorial content, the community forum, and of course, discounts and savings on our future courses, our existing courses. Events that we're part of, so there'll be lots of advantages. So I think you might actually make money if you join. It's actually a net money winner for you. It could be a sideline business, it could be a side hustle for you. But look, I think there's a lot of value there. You can find out more at pierpoint.info /PAC. So I'll leave that up there. And just one final point, founder member discounts are available until midnight. And there's also corporate sponsorships available. And we've already had our first corporate sponsorship takeover. So this is not a corporate endorsement of the PAC, because we wouldn't expect a corporate to do that. This is more enabling their staff to participate. So the company picks up the cost at a discounted rate, that at a greater rate than an individual can get. And their members now get access to information, makes them better, which makes their firm better. So think about that. You can see it again at the Pierpoint website, followed by /PAC. For the rest of the time, what we're actually going to talk about is I'm going to let every one of our experts talk a little bit about what their expertise is. We've got sort of 5 minutes left, but I'm happy to go over that. Hopefully you can as well. And then at the end of it, we will also be able to have questions and comments that'll be in the comment section, and I'll put links for all of the people on the on this session today. I'll put them all in the comments as well. So enough on that for now. What I want to do is just ask everyone what their key issue is for their firm and their business focus. So first, Ali, over to you.
Sure, Roy. I mean, I think the key focus will, as we said, is going to be around putting in those tram lines, and specifically helping firms to navigate through a very, very uncertainty of where taxation is. And I think one of the difficulty we're going to have is firms are going to get worried about their reputation. They're going to have all these legal cases going on across in Europe as well as the United States. And so charting that path is going to be a key thing. The other key thing is obviously sort of like US taxes play a disproportionate amount of have impact on the industry. So things like the US 871M compliance is going to be an issue. And of course, we mentioned the ESG agenda as to where helping that tax fit into that overall position. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Ali. I'm going to turn over to Radek in a second, but Andy Agathangelou has advised in the comments that there's going to be a technology and digitization event next week. So Andy, yes, please drop it in the comments. And if you've already had to go, let me know and I'll put it in the comments later. So thanks very much.
If I can just come in, Roy, you and I are actually also speaking at a panel together. We moved from SFR to SFDR. So a little plug there.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to that, Ali, and thanks for the invitation. And that's in conjunction with our friends at Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments, CISI. They're also the people who provide the CPD credits for the Pierpoint courses. So well done for mentioning that. Thanks, Ali. Radek, you've got lots on the agenda on your end. Oh, you're on mute again.
Okay, thank you so much, Roy. So in terms of, I have 3 points. So first of all, learning from you, from PAC and the community. Secondly, I think what I would like to announce is that we are going to redraft our strategic themes paper for Global PSSL soon. So at this stage, we have draft principles in place, which are subject to consultation, but I'm also trying to encourage new participants to take part in this initiative. And one of the best opportunities for those new participants is to contribute to the themes paper, which is like a policy paper for global PSSL. And the third thing is that, oh my God, we are going to announce a number of developments in the next 2 months. Some of them relating to our work stream work. So we have work streams on short and long emerging markets, as well as governance and stewardship. And there is some ongoing work undertaken within those work streams. I'm going to announce a new work stream on data soon. In addition, we have a high-profile event taking place in February, but I'm already thinking about April and June and, next Christmas. So I think my key message is that we need to work together. It's not about one person or global PSSL as an institution. It's all about shared action, shared understanding, and this is why I love PAC. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, look, as you would expect with something that is as trending upwards as ESG, there's a lot of work to do, and it's maybe unsurprising you've got a big agenda ahead of you. So thanks for that. Can I now go to, let's say, Jeff? Why don't we go to you, Jeff?
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. There's an awful lot of things that I'm focused on the repo side. There'll be an article coming out, I think, in the next few days with ISG that will address a few of these. But we still have a pile of regulations that are going to impact the repo market and are impacting the repo market, not just ESMA's SFTR, but CSDR, MiFID II, and the Fed OLA, the Volcker rule. All of those things are still impacting us, and we need to deal with them. I think that I mentioned the lack of growth in the CCP, ETP, ATP, and peer-to-peer has been alarming, and is going to be something that we have to deal with and we should discuss. I think that there's still supply issues in the repo market, both for the cash providers, the natural cash providers, and also in the behavior of the broker dealers and banks. And the Fed probably would need to address that. And since I mentioned the Fed, the zero interest rate policy is causing some problems still for U.S. repo players, and we're going to have to concentrate on that. There's plenty more to chew off, but those are the first ones that come to mind. Yeah,
other than that, it'll be a quiet year.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Jeff. And there is a lot. And again, I encourage everyone to read Jeff's material. I learn something every time I do that. I was going to go to Zafira, but I had the sneaking suspicion that some of what Julian's going to talk about has to do with learning and development. So that's just a guess. So over to you, Julian.
Roy, thanks a lot. So I think that there's going to be some really hot topics in 2021. And I think these are going to be led by the industry rather than perhaps by the vendors. And I think this is going to be a step change that we're going to see. And I think it's important that the industry increases its voice and uses community-based initiatives such as PAC to really share their thoughts on what they see as critical challenges that need to be addressed. It could be the allocations function and reallocations. It could be collateral processes. And I think that quite a lot of organizations are starting to look at the increasing focus on efficiency and reducing cost. looking at making sure that the highest percentage possible can process through STP, focusing the business on perhaps higher value business processes rather than GC. The outcome to that is that I think that CDM is, as I mentioned, I think one of my pet subjects. I'm hoping that we will get an opportunity to put in place a training course for a bit of crossover. And I think that we'll be working closely with the business to make sure that they are as informed as possible about the digitization agenda that's most important to them.
Great. Julian, so I guess that's for Q1. I don't know what you're going to do the rest of the year. I'm going to go to Sean. Now, Sean has either been playing football while other people have been talking, or he's kicked his cat. So
practicing my kick-ups. I have a very challenging game of five-side football every sort of hour or so with my 9-year-old in the office. I have the desk space underneath. He has the door as the goals. So I need to practice my one-touch, two-touch. That's the basis of it. Look, for us at Margin Reform, it's as it's always been, unfortunately. It's regulations, regulatory stories, CSDR, UMR particularly. UMR got delayed, as a lot of other things did, extended out a year. So that's now the big fish, the big thing to fry for us in phase 5 and phase 6 of 2021, 2022. On top of that, I think post-trade is going to go through a bit of revolution in the next 3 to 5 years. People realise that they've neglected it to a certain extent, and then they now need to start looking at it. That's where the efficiencies can be made. That's where cost efficiencies and resource efficiencies can be made. People are spending too much on poor processes. That's recognised. I think the industry recognises it, and I expect to see a lot of work coming out of that, both from an industry perspective, a PAC perspective, and from a client perspective. So that's really our focus. Obviously, for me as well, it's the training program. Margin Reform, we've written our Introduction to Collateral Management, which is online through the Pierpoint Academy, and we hope to extend that out into maybe some UMR kind of work. We're definitely looking at IBOR and how that affects collateral management and the buy side right now, and looking at that and hopefully doing some webinars on that in a not too distant future.
Great, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out of your football career to, collateral focus to spend it with us. So,
pleasure.
We've had the last few people talk about learning and development and training. So, makes sense, Safira.
Yeah, well, there you go. I think my agenda really, Roy, is to continue with what we're doing and building the Pierpoint Alpha Community, continue to work with my learners and the decision makers, business unit heads to provide excellent training that's measurable and that really has an impact on performance, starting with the courses we have written by Sean and Jeff, which, my learners are always really dear to me, and I make sure I work with the trainers to make sure they're having a good learning experience. We continue to build out our course offerings. I'm really, really interested in ESG, and definitely will be keeping my ear on the ground on developments with that and how that ties in with training. But overarching, training and development, education, it's not going to go away, or it's not siloed, if I can say it that way. All your great subject matter experts that we have here, we'll look forward to working with everyone in making our community in financial services, SecFin, and technology as well, just improving communications and learning and doing it better.
Great. Listen, thanks so much, Safira. You are probably one of the busiest people in the team at the moment. So long may that stay the case. And thanks for all the work that you do with the clients and the trainers that you actually deal with regularly. So look, everyone, that's kind of it. That's a wrap. Again, I will put links for all of the people that were joining us there. You've got the Pierpoint community. Hopefully you'll actually find that interesting and beneficial and make the most of it. And thanks again, and see you next Wednesday. Cheers and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great.